Fellows, what is TLC and what is not TLC? This is a question. It's not my most beloved questions, but this is a question for now. Because you see, more than 15 years ago, I, with a very good friend of mine, Dr. Avner Passal, he happens to be an organizational behavioral consultant, and he came to me with the idea, and we developed an application. And what I'm trying to strive now, more than 15 years later, is to get it recognized as part of the TLC body of knowledge. So this is what it's all about. Hello, the method in itself is not new, as I told you. Actually, I already spoke about it back in Cambridge. When was it? 2002 or 2003, I don't remember. Okay, this was the very first TLC-ICO conference. I got some recognition, and I got some recognition from Eli Goldwasser himself. Alan Barnard, I know, has used quite some of the ideas, and he's implemented it in a somewhat different environment than what I will going to do today. In order a little bit to make a small introduction to what it is all about or the need of it, I remember a very favorite movie that I've seen called The Producers by Ken Brooks. Those of you who did not see the movie, it's about two cons who have a great idea of producing a very big show that will be a flop. The idea is, if it will be a flop, the investors will not ask where is the money, because it looks like very clear where is the money. They implemented whatever they thought will be really a flop, and it turned out to be a huge success. And in a certain scene, the main character is asking himself the following question: I've chosen the wrong play, I've chosen the wrong director, I've chosen the wrong actor. Where did I go right? And I believe you will see sort of the relevancy here. Okay, let us look on a very embarrassing moment in the life of a high-tech company where they have launched a very big marketing event in order to promote the very new product who are doing all kinds of great things. However, it turned out somehow to be a flop. Very embarrassing moment, you will agree with me. And there is a lot to be done to try to repair the damage. And you know, the CEO is doing two things. First of all, he's ready to resign because, okay, after such kind of an event, he cannot stay. But before he does this, he likes to do something very strange, right? He likes to understand what the hell was happening here. How this happened, what went wrong. This is the usual normal question, what went wrong, not so much what went right. Even this could be a very key question. Fellows, if you would be in this company, what would you do? Is it very obvious what happened here? Is it very obvious that you know exactly what to do so nothing of the sort will ever happen again? Let me put you in some kind of a perspective on where I'm going, where is the way I look at it, TLC is now. Until now, the main focus of TOC was on planning and execution methods. Would you, generally speaking, agree with me that this so far was a focus? It's not the objective, it's the focus. Let us bring another term, not from TOC, but I think it's still extremely important term, which is a SWOT. And how TOC relates to SWOT? Definitely, TOC has a lot to say about weaknesses. This is a very important insight, I think, of TOC to see the power of the weakest link, the power of the weakness, the power of identifying the core problem. Then, in the last years of his life, Goldratt went into a little bit different route to look on strengths, which means actually he's, for me, a very important term, a decisive competitive edge. And what is your unique value to give to a certain market segment? Now, unique value is based on something that you are strong at, right? Here comes a kind of the idea, if in TOC we already came up with so much superior technique to do operations, how can we elevate the operations into a decisive competitive edge? This was quite a basic part of the viable vision. However, what is still missing? A signal that are originating externally. We did not plan it, we did not ask for it, but it did happen anyway. How do we read them? How do we use them to improve ourselves now and in the future? What I'm going to show is a certain methodology. Maybe I should use the word application because this is more known in the TOC, which is focused on some type of threats part of the SWOT. These kinds of threats are quite a lot caused by inertia, which means it follows certain paradigms in which some people are stuck with, but reality has changed, because reality does change from time to time, and now they do not really fit reality. And then we need to do some kind of corrective actions whenever we suddenly realize that we need to update a flawed paradigm that we have in our own mind. So what is learning? At least learning from experience for me means really understanding the cause and effect in our reality. And yes, TOC tries to do it all the time, but fellow, please, the challenge is huge. Because no matter how many CRTs you have developed in your life, something is still missing there. And there are some events that will bring this up. So this is about updating our own awareness of the cause and effect in our own reality. And once we realize that we have some kind of flawed paradigm and now we need to change it, we need to look and rebuild the causality from now on. Now, the first question that comes into mind, how do we know that we don't know? Okay, Goldratt already taught us, never say I know. By the way, he also sort of implied the never say I don't know, because this is also wrong. You always know something, you never know everything. Okay, so we are some kind of on the way. But the idea here, at least, is you know when you don't know, when you get a signal from reality that somehow is not in line with your paradigms, with your thinking. There is something that looks strange. So you ask, what caused it? Because eventually you try to look into the future. Fellows, please, when something happens, I'm not speaking about the immediate effort that is required, because if some damage was caused, we need to reduce the immediate damage. I'm not speaking about it. I'm speaking a little bit about the longer term in which, okay, we had this incident, what can we learn from it in the future? So, are you really ready to read the signals? And because it's pretty painful to suddenly realize that me, has a flawed paradigm, and we need to change. Let me tell you, because part of my life I spent in programming. And this is kind of a lesson that programmers have that many of you do not have. There is a very clear proof how much nonsense you can create, I can create. This was a very hard lesson for me, just to realize a simple fact that eventually we need to get to live with it, because programmers do live with the idea that they are producing bugs, this is the other name for flawed paradigm, all over the place. And then there is a chase to correct them. I think in other areas it's not all that clear, because there is not something like this brutal creature called the computer that throws your mistake directly on your face back, and you cannot just pretend that it is rain, okay? So signals force us many times to react. It does not mean that we have learned the lesson. So we need to do something a little bit more, put more efforts into it. What is a paradigm? It is a small cause and effect tree. Now the second part of the sentence is very important, because it is treated as if it is true. Fellow, you may be more philosophical than others and say there is truth in the world, or maybe there is no truth in the world. I'm not going into it at all. What I'm saying is we have, as creatures, as human beings, to react in the vast majority of the cases very automatically, and this is also the way our brain is built. So we take certain paradigms as if they are true. And do you know what? 99% of the cases they are true. Question is, what happens when it's not true? So a very simple kind of a paradigm. If I explain to you what needs to be done, and you did not ask me any questions, I take it that you know what needs to be done. Fellows, I was sort of careful when I constructed it. I'm not implying that you will do it. This maybe I already understand that there could be a certain gap, but I assume that you know what needs to be done. This is a basic for our communications, right? When we say something and people do not ask questions, we take it that they have understood us, right? Okay, we know that this is not always true, right? Everybody of us has this kind of experience sometimes. So we behave according to a certain paradigm and take it as if it is true. I want just to make this distinction, because the term paradigm was used by Eli to refer for something extremely, extremely substantial, which means to move from the flawed paradigm to the updated paradigm is extremely painful. I'm not going to such kind of height. Well, sometimes maybe, depending on the case. But even the small kind of realization needs sometimes to be understood. Like, fellows, normally I would say that I know how to cross a road. It was when I came to India that somehow suddenly I got into my mind that this is not necessarily true. An observation. When I come to an organization, in quite a lot of times, there is a flawed paradigm that is shared, not by just one or two people. It is shared by quite a lot of people throughout the organization. Most of what I will do today applies to the organization need and learning. You can do whatever you will like to try maybe to generalize it also to the personal basis. But my aim are organizations, because they are much slower than the individual to admit mistakes and make a change. So insight number one, we need to learn, and more than that, we need to learn the right lesson. Because there are two big obstacles to learning. And okay, the biggest obstacle is a simple fear. And especially when you are within an organization, there is a huge fear of simply being blamed. And blaming is bad for us if we are blamed. I mean, to blame others, I have no problem at all. But to be blamed is a huge problem for me, so I'm trying not to get into it. It's kind of a culture that we need maybe to change, and maybe with this kind of thing, maybe we can already slightly impact it. It's kind of a question. There is also personal fear because, again, I'm getting a little bit embarrassed and with myself, with my ego, when suddenly I realize that I made a major mistake. Okay, but we need to live with it and go on. Then there is another obstacle. The pain that suddenly you realize that you try to learn, but eventually you learn the wrong lesson. And then there are all kinds of UDIs, undesired effects that suddenly come up. Because fellows, if my learning is to do the opposite of what I did before, in the vast majority of the cases, this is a major mistake. Okay? If just I will take one, if somebody betrayed me, now not to trust anybody else is a huge mistake. Okay? Can you see that this kind of pain could lead to a very wrong kind of lesson? Then there is another thing. We tend very quickly to come up with an explanation. But is it the right explanation? Sometimes yes. Maybe. Could be many times yes. But there are some times in which, hey, you went out very quickly into your first explanations that came up into your mind, like this guy is an idiot, but not only that this might be not true, it might be not the cause. Okay? If I go back to the example, because this example that I've started with a high-tech company, I like it to follow it throughout. Sam, the CEO, has nominated a team. He did not do the learning himself. He decided, I am nominating several people to inquire the case and recommend what to do in the future. Now, like in the usual wisdom, he nominated people who were outside of the, this kind of project and the launch of the project. He looked for people who were not involved in the case. Is this the right move? Is this the best? I think that a team is a good idea. And the first reason why it is a good idea is because it's somewhat more effective in trying to push the team in this way to go out of sticking to the first explanation, because if I bring several people, hopefully the first impulse of some of the several people will be different. And now we have more than one explanation. There is something else. We are very emotional. I think part of the value of TOC is to try to move us from being ultra emotional to be at least partially emotional and quite a lot of logical. Okay? Fellow, we will never get out of our emotion, and actually we should not do so. They are extremely important. But the role of logic is quite powerful. So I believe that when we bring several people together, at least the chance of using logical arguments will get a place. Of course, you will see that within the whole process, there is even more emphasis that this actually will happen. And people will use logic instead of emotions and blaming. This kind of sensitivity I need. Okay, you see, I'm trying to learn from this experience. Okay, who should be in the team? Funny as it may sound, I claim part of the team needs to be people who were involved in the case. And there are two main reasons for it. One is kind of declaration. We are not in the business of blaming. We do not look for the guilty party who caused this. We need to learn, we need to identify a flawed paradigm. Now, the people who were involved have a lot of knowledge and intuition about what truly happens there. I still believe that we need to involve people very much external. Why? Because there are chances that they will be out of some paradigms that the people who were involved have somewhere in their mind. So it needs to be, in my mind and experience, a mixed team in order that there will be this kind of fruitful negotiations, if you want, between the people who were involved, they know, but they also had this kind of flawed paradigm that needs to be surfaced, and the people coming from the external that can ask a question, why the king is naked? Okay? Because not everybody can ask this kind of questions. Insight number 3. Please see, a flawed paradigm causes a gap between expectations and outcomes. Why? The paradigm itself dominates certain level of expectations. Reality speaks otherwise. So, the best signals that could happen from a flawed paradigm is that there will be a gap between what you expected and what truly happened. And we call it a surprise. And for me, it's a very important word because this is what we experience. You see, Eli Goldwart preferred to call it a mystery. It's a very good name, mystery. However, in my normal life, I don't feel it so much mystery, but if you ask me what kind of surprises I have, well, from time to time I have surprises. And this is exactly what it is. So we can now look at it from the other side. When what we first see is a gap between expectations and outcome, let us know one thing. There is a flawed paradigm somewhere in our own mind that maybe through quite a long way have caused this gap. And now, if we want to learn, we need to start search after this flawed paradigm. And this is for me the trigger for learning, is to be surprised, because this is a kind of signal that say, hey, there is a potential here. Of course, if the surprise is small and the thing is daily, etc., okay, we still believe in focusing quite a lot. But the first trigger is to be surprised. The first task of a team trying to inquire is actually to verbalize the gap. And I find out, maybe I learned this because I am not sure whether I really expected it, how much time it could take to define the gap. Because we feel, maybe our bosses felt, a gap that is big enough to initiate an inquiry, initiate learning. But is it already a definition of the gap? Not necessarily. If I go back to the gap, please see, and this happens quite a lot. If you really think about it, there are two different gaps. One gap is where the prior expectation were that the clients will be overwhelmed with a new product. Outcomes are, it's the other way around. They were very unimpressed and it caused all kinds of damage. Well, this is one gap. There is another. There was a project that was supposed to do some miracles. And it took so much time and so much energy and quite a lot of people to create something that did not do the job. So suddenly they found out that this big sophisticated system can be bypassed by a clever team. What is the key difference? Which one shall we choose? Question is about focusing, and fellow, it could be that maybe we need two teams to inquire two different gaps because they are not the same. Points to discussion here. If gap one is chosen, what is the focus? Fellow, please see, the gap number one speaks about the planning of this launching event. How come it was planned this way? How come maybe there was not enough rehearsal? Maybe there was none. I don't know. There is no details right now in the story. Was it flawed, the planning? And if we have known in advance that the product cannot really produce all the value, maybe we could have launched a very different kind of thing, not really showing what it cannot do. If we choose the second one, then the question is, how come a monumental project failed to achieve its expectations? A very valid question. How come management were not aware that the project deviated from its initial objectives? There's already some kind of assumption here. But the surprise lent itself to something. How come we did not know at least 1 month ago that the system does not deliver everything that it was supposed to deliver? Generally speaking, when it comes to teams, I ask, you do not deal with both. You deal with one. This is your choice. The other one, it will be maybe the prerogative of the management to see if it's still important to inquire, let them have another team focusing on the other gap. Let us say for the story that the team chose gap number 2, looking on the project, not on the specific event. Comes something that is extremely important for me, which means when we need to get information, how do we get information? And fellows, quite a lot of consultants here, I like to tell you something. Whenever I and you are coming to a new organization, we need to look for information to know what kind of organization, what are the main needs, and somehow how can we come into the picture and help the organization to gain something extraordinary. So there is a question, how do you search after information? And the common practice, especially when it comes to inquiring an unfortunate event, is trying to look for every fact that somehow looks relevant, which means speaking with quite a lot of people, reading any documents that seem to be relevant, looking everywhere for some meaningful information, assuming that if we will see something meaningful, somehow we will connect it and mark it, this is meaningful, but this is not. Okay? Because just suppose, for kind of the joke, that Sam, his daughter was married 2 months ago, so for several months, he was not really at work all the time. Is it a relevant fact or not? You see, if I don't have a guideline, I may include it. And what the hell has this to do with it? It could do if he got memos about problems and those memos stayed on his table, right? Fellow, please, if we go after information in an unguided way, we get so much data that it's very clear to see any kind of pattern in it. So we get more data, and this is a vicious circle. And I've seen quite a lot of inquiries, sometimes formal inquiries, because when the flop is in the level of government, there is some kind of inquiry going. Most of those inquiries are trying to blame somebody, but in too many times they are going in circles, takes huge amount of time, and eventually they get into nothing. So here comes my fourth insight. Hypotheses lead the inquiry. Because my proposed way is to force the team to raise as many hypotheses without knowing more facts than just the bare facts, or whatever they do know. Tell me what you think could lead to this gap. And let us just write it in a free, informal way. Bring me wild guesses. Bring me. I want a list of explanations. You see, I look on the team leaders, the ones that should press to come up with as many as possible. This should serve more than one purpose. The first purpose really is to move people out of the very first explanations that they have in their mind, at least see that there are more than one, most of the cases. And of course then, if you will a little bit bear with me, to see how this leads to a much more focused search for meaningful information. Only when we have a whole list, now we try to see how can we substantiate whether this hypothesis truly, first of all, gives me a full explanation. Here comes a little bit of TOC and their knowledge about sufficiency and things like this to say, okay, for this to happen, not only this happened, something else had to happen as well. I was trying several times to do this trick with people who do not know the TP. And what I really find out that people give very logical, rational explanation in the vast majority of the times. What they many times lack is sufficiency. This is number one, lacking, which means somebody needs to look especially into the sufficiency to see, is it sufficient? Only then once we have full explanations, maybe we have several, we look on each one of them to see whether it happened, which means now we are looking for information that either validate or invalidate the hypothesis. Fellow, I'm using validate in a careful sense. Validate will never be proof. It is highly likely. Okay, it is likely. It's not a proof. We will never get a proof. Not in our life. The whole thing is, first of all, really to get the necessary facts and save time by being focused. I represent the gap in this way in which I have expectation one side, outcome on the other side, and I need an explanation. So I look for effect, cause effect to explain what happened. Generally speaking, there are three categories that we need to look for. One category is the expectation were flawed to start with. It's why did you expect that your technicians can come with a foolproof system that does this and that? Well, the technology is not sufficient or whatever. These are flawed expectations. Of course, on the other hand, there are flawed execution. The mission was possible, but then somebody made a mistake. There is always a third one, and I will always put it on the very last, that if I do not see anything, then maybe there could be in life some rare statistical fluke, and that's it. There is no real mistake or anything to look into it. Back to the case, I raised some hypotheses. When you go into it, I mean, I'm not going to go into in a very great detail right now, but you can download the presentation. You can also download my paper. These are three hypotheses. Initial ones, it's not a complete, and there are a lot of parallels between them. Just trying to pull out of people what they think, how it came. So one will say the hypothesis, there is no way to build such kind of a system. Hypothesis two, that simple, look, the project people developed what they knew to develop. If there was something extremely difficult, they did not develop it. Yes, they did not also notify the management that those things were not developed. Okay, somebody else come up. Do you know what? With this kind of system to identify people approaching a protected place, we have a problem. We cannot use the alarm, false alarms. False alarms are not good. Okay? Because of this, we need to be very careful in our identification. So this leaves on the side some kind of possibilities to bypass the system. Hypothesis 4, there were no clear and detailed specification approved by top management of what the WISE cameras, this is the project, should do. Hypothesis 5, there were not enough involvement of highly professional security people. Number 6 is the project team was not a really good team. They did not have the skills for such kind of an ambitious product. Okay, this is a very initial hypothesis. I like to speak a little bit about the TP. It can be used, it could be beneficial, but there are some changes. Because normally in the TP we are used to say if X then Y, and it is in the present tense. Here we specifically refer to the past. I'm not speaking in general if X then Y. I'm speaking whether Y yesterday or last week was truly caused by X. It's a different question. Which means if X existed at the time, yes, it could have caused Y. We will never be certain that X always causes Y. By the way, even when we say if X and Y, we don't really mean at every single time. Because if it is 99 out of 100, for normal logical purposes like CRT, it's good enough. But if you inquire a single case, this is not good enough. Came with something like, if M thought X was the best person for the job, and X was a candidate for the job, and M had voting power, then M voted for X. You see, this is cause and effect in the past tense. Can you see it that if I will bring it in the present tense, I will accept it as a very good kind of paradigm? But if it's in the past, well, there are some cases in which it will not be true. Like if M was handsomely paid to vote for somebody else, so no matter what he thought. Okay, and just to give you a possibility in which maybe in real life you would not care for this insufficiency. Validating existence in the past many times, it's simple, we need just to check whether it happened in reality. It's written somewhere, someone can tell us. Many times we speak about things that we cannot directly validate. And then we need this logical structure of effect, cause, effect. If X caused Y, then we should have looked for Z, because Z should have been there as well. This is the effect, cause, effect. And if I see Z, now I can be fairly certain that X existed at the time. The other possibility is simply dive deeper. I cannot really validate that X was there. But if I go and I say, if X was there, what caused is, and then I will find out that there was a cause who could cause X, I'm getting some kind of validation, by the way, or invalidation. Because if definitely there was no cause for X, then maybe X did not exist. Look, I ask myself quite a lot why we don't use a TP in much more than it's currently used. Because to me the TP is important because it provides us with really structured, verbalized logical statement and opens the argument for reservation. By the way, this is all what it is about, to open my logic to you so you can find, or hopefully not find, flaws in my logic. But this is the main way to validate the logic. Question is, for me, is how strict we need to go in judging logical statement. Fellows, why I am saying it, I have my own feeling, and this is my own observation, that somehow we started to be much too strict. And because of this, it caused quite a lot of energy of us, and then we don't want to invest this amount of energy again. And somehow in my mind, I think maybe if we relax to some degree, very carefully, this kind of strictness, we can get a wider appeal of using it. So I've put kind of a cloud to say, because on one hand, we need to check every argument in a very strict way in order to be sure that this is what we call dry, okay, dry logical connection. On the other hand, we need to be somewhat quick and convenient, because otherwise people will stop doing it. So look, the way to me to sort of evaporate this cloud or bring up the assumption, it's good enough when the cause and effect logic is valid for the vast majority of the cases. When I say this, I mean, okay, if in the vast majority of the cases people will understand you and understand the right logical way, and this is what it is, this is good enough. All kinds of other things, the verbalization is not fully perfect, so it could, and some insufficiencies that does not really matter, keep it out. This is my way. But this I'm saying is only kind of in perspective with this kind of endeavors that you get a team to look for a real painful case, and if you try to be too strict with them, question is when eventually they will have the answer to the question asked, what caused the gap? What flawed paradigm caused the gap? I will not go through this tree. By the way, yesterday evening when I viewed it again, I found on myself, even though originally I tried my best, some very logical flaws. The relief for me was, eventually I do believe that if this is what happened, which I took hypothesis 4 of the list, then I would have gotten the gap. On the way, I suddenly realized that I need some new hypothesis, like that the project team was reluctant to tell management about features that were too difficult to develop in full. Okay? And it is a necessary element here. So every hypothesis, once I have a full explanation, I am checking it for the facts. Did we assume what did we assume existed in the time? Did it cause? The important validated hypothesis in the case, I'm coming back to the story as a story, and I'm saying, suppose all of these were eventually validated. Management did not clearly specify in writing what the system should, the system should eliminate the need for guards to watch the screens, which means that the system could be fully automated, no human intervention whatsoever. However, management did assume it. The professionals were all of the highest degree, so we cannot say that the team was not capable. While the project people did not agree that they were reluctant to report what they were unable to achieve, there was enough evidence for that. I mean, even though they don't like to admit it, actually we have enough to see this truly happened. And the main technical problem was to distinguish between people and animals. This was a technical thing that because of this, the technician assumed that it would be good if when they look on movement, the movement is on 2 legs. This will be what will make a difference between a person coming or a cat or a dog, whatever. And by the way, there was another problem that was not really resolved. What happens when there is a very bad weather? Just to show you that when we look suddenly into this, the system could fail also from another reason. Fellow, did we learn? Fellow, do you understand that until now we learned the facts? We know what happened. We don't know why it happened. Normally, in the TOC logic, we have an undesired effect, and we come to the core one, this is still mainly operational. What we do now, we create a cloud. And through the cloud, we surface hidden assumption. And then we challenge the hidden assumption. What do you mean by challenge the hidden assumption? Fellows, for me, challenging a flawed paradigm. Because the assumptions are actually paradigms that we have in our mind, especially if they are hidden assumptions, they are paradigms, and this is a way to challenge them. However, when we look on a single case that happened in the past, I am not sure that the people were stuck in a conflict. Fellow, people could stuck in the conflict if the undesired effect is already known for quite a while and we did not solve the problem, which means this is a reoccurring problem. Then I have all the rationale to assume people are stuck in a conflict. But if this is the first time that such kind of an UDI has suddenly came, I don't know whether there was a conflict, whether a conflict was recognized. Because actually, probably people just follow the inertia of well-established paradigms. They were not feeling any kind of conflict. So here comes another. We understand the operational cause. This is what looking for the real facts, and now we know what started it, what other things happened, and how the gap happened. We know the story, but why this story happened, we still do not fully understand. Which is insight number 5, how come key questions? Somebody asked me why I'm not using the normal question of why. The only thing is I feel, and maybe this is not right, that how come is a stronger question than why. Because it's also, how come is forcing you to get an answer? I mean, this is the way I look on this, because actually there are synonyms. So there is a critical insight. It all came from my friend, Dr. Avner Passal, who really insisted to start with, don't stop with the operational cause, stop only when you get a flawed paradigm. So we proceed the operational cause and ask, how come? The most important operational causes in this case were, how come the initial specifications were verbalized only in a very generic way? Or, how come the project team did not update the management with the holes in the system? Okay, this is at least my analyze came to 2 core operational problems, and I like to ask how come on both. One will come up that the probable cause, a probable paradigm cause, is it is a part of the project team to define the final specification to match the managerial goals. So management think it's not our task to really come with very clear specification. We ask you in general way, in our own language, what we want to achieve, and you as the technical people, you tell us how to do it. Is the above paradigm flawed? Let us check first the other one, and the other one gives a little bit more room. Because you see, what I like to understand is the project team did not update the management with the holes in the system. You need to understand, first of all, that they had some very big difficulties that caused some holes in the system, and then why they did not report it. And I came in my own analysis that you can, of course, criticize, but please don't do it too much because we are not solving this problem, we are solving the methodology. The flawed paradigms that I came for this case, when we explain the business issue to very good intelligent technicians and engineers, They fully understand all the ramifications of the business case on the technological requirement. Fellow, can you understand? I speak with very intelligent people. So I'm saying we are facing kind of a situation in which security needs to identify human beings coming near. I like to do it in the most effective way, because when we put people on screens, people sometimes sleep. So what kind of things we can do? So once we tell them to the technological people, they understand what to do and how to do. However, is this really true? Do the technician really understand the business issues? Fellow, if this is a flawed paradigm, the next step is how come next step is to create the updated paradigm. And I have some insights about it that would say, first of all, do not change the original more than absolutely necessary. Okay? Don't tell me that technicians and engineers understand nothing. Okay? Because I'm not accepting it. There is a tendency to do the opposite, but this is wrong. So if I verbalized it, give me this credit that maybe it's not too bad, when we explain the business issues to very good intelligent technicians and engineers, they fully understand all the ramifications of the business case on the technological requirements. This is a paradigm which is found flawed. So question is how to update it. Don't have too many clues for it, but what I came with is something a little bit moderate. Technicians, scientists, engineers understand the technology, but many times they do not have good understanding of the way it should be utilized by the users, the necessary marketing messages, and other business aspects. I tried a little bit to go a little bit more into what could be not fully understood by the intelligent people that I'm interacting with. Okay, did we finish the learning? We know the flawed paradigm. We know by what to replace it. What additional steps we must take? Oh, there are. We need to inquire the immediate ramifications of the change in the paradigm. I can test that in those cases that I was directly involved with, unfortunately for me or for you, they were all highly security cases in which I cannot tell the story at all. But I can tell you that once the flawed paradigm was identified, the ramifications were pretty high, even in a surprising way, because people, okay, we are using it for quite a lot of things. So we need to look right now, what does it mean, the change, how it will change our operation, how it will change our policies, our procedures, almost everything. And fellows, sometimes, here I go with, you remember the SWOT, so also opportunities in the SWOT. So this is not really intended for opportunities, but sometimes when you identify flawed paradigm, if you could just come to think a little bit more, what does it mean, suddenly new opportunities are coming up as well. We have a tool. We need to use it, which is called the Future Reality Tree, which is based, there is a change. Here, it is a change in a paradigm. We now understand cause and effect a little bit differently. What will be its implications on processes, on quite a lot of things? And then, of course, like any good future reality tree, we'll need to go quite into the negative branches of the changes that we are now putting on our procedures based on the updated paradigm. What I did with this, if this is a new verbalization that the technician do not have good understanding of the way it should be utilized by the users, then we may need to put in every project someone who really understands the business and the marketing issues, the aspect of once we have the product, how we are going to utilize it for the benefit of our company. So he's not a technological project manager, but he's a business case project manager. Maybe you need to use something of the sort. And when it comes to specification, we don't need technological specification, but we need a very good description how this new product should serve our sales. Okay? When we do it, we do have a negative branch coming from putting another person in a project that fully take into his shoulders the responsibility that the business case will be met at every angle. We get that sometimes there could be clashes between the technology project manager and the associate business development manager. What can we do? When we have two people with not very clear authorities, there could be a clash, which came in, and again you can disagree with me, that funny enough, I believe we can take the project managers and train them to truly, truly, truly understand the business perspective. And this, for me, is a demand for a good project manager. Being a great technological guy is far from being enough. Insight number 8, don't stop there. Probably the ramification of the insights are even higher. Because the common tendency is learn only the immediate lessons that are deduced from an unfortunate event, which means we will not have in the future an event that such kind of monumental project that needed to achieve certain business aspects and failed in some of them, and no one in the management were aware of it, this will not happen again. Now I have this kind of chutzpah, I hope at least Americans here know what does it mean, some kind of a bold to say probably because of change in a paradigm there is more ramification than just this. So we need to do a real attempt to generalize the change in the original paradigm to cover wider scope, because most of the time it's very beneficial to do so. And there are, generally speaking, I can see about 2 different ways. One, look for the impact of the old and new paradigms for different types of events and conditions than those of the original event. And the second one, to expand the verbalization. I mean, let us look on the way, do this word, could we generalize it? A little bit demonstrating on this particular case. What's the current process of raising ideas for new products? Here is a company in which their business is to come up with new innovations. What is the process? New innovations, fellows, see there need to be a match between someone who is fully understanding the marketing needs, what exists in the market, what people look for, what could eliminate a need. I'm taking now part of the Eli Schragenheim questions. These are people who know this. The technological people know how to translate. How can we achieve it? With what? With how? With something like this. How do we make this marriage? By the way, between you and me, this is a huge, very wide problem. I am told, at least in the medical thing, that there is probably huge amount of value of existing technology that nobody yet have matched it to a medical need. But once there will be the meeting, suddenly something, you might call it trivial, will happen. This is what you want. Oh, we have already the technology. I mean, it's doing something very different, but basically I can see it can give you your needs. It's a very general need. So you can see, once we understand that technical people, engineering, they are very great in technology, but they are not really understanding quite a lot of the marketing requirements and things like this, maybe we can find a way to bring them together for raising new ideas. So not just about following a project that already decided, but initiating new things. Then we can look on all the new paradigms, speak about technicians, scientists, and engineers. This is the way I have used it. Is it only them? What about legal advisors? Don't you think that sometimes they fail to see the business points or the business opportunities, and they block it because of their own legal school of thought that they went through? How this could be handled? So why not other professionals? Still, fellows, I have another insight. Spreading the learning. Maybe I will spend a little bit time here because I'm not sure that I have a full answer to this. Here is a problem. When my friend and I have developed this kind of process, there was already kind of a very fashion term, the learning organization. And also software people came up with kind of the idea of having database of insights, artificial intelligence, all of this. Well, in a way, this is a real need, because how can a company that have acquired quite a lot of wisdom keep it throughout time? Between you and me, we are in the same problem in the TOC implementation, yes? How to preserve the knowledge to later time? What do we do? Put it in a database? If we have come into idea that a paradigm is flawed, and could be, it's not only me that had this flawed paradigm. Maybe it was all over here, have the same flawed paradigm, and now I've learned, in the hard way, but at least I've learned, that there are some spots there that need updating, and I've updated it. How do I deliver this understanding to the people who might be still in the flawed paradigm, but they will not experience it in the way I did or my team did? So this is kind of the problem. So we don't want that only the people who were involved in the event will understand the lesson. Between you and me, one of the things that makes me very much irritating is a kind, especially in the media, especially in the politics arena, that if there was a flop, somebody must pay the price, or in a nice language, takes the responsibility. It actually means to resign and go home. And now I'm asking a simple question. Tell me, who is more might do this mistake again in the future? The one who was hit by it, or a new guy coming in? Do you see something extremely flawed here? Okay, but I like that the new guy, if there is a new guy, when there is a new guy, will at least fully internalize the lessons that was learned. Because between you and me, you changed policies, you did not deliver the lesson. The lesson was not delivered. And on the other hand, you can create the cloud. We should not overload people with all kinds of lessons coming because I will not remember anything. So we have to focus on lessons that are very substantial, and then we need to tell the whole story. We need to take a very kind of short, well-concentrated story that will tell us the logic of what happened and what did we learn. So I do recommend to have a not too big database when the brief description of the key lessons are open to all the employees. I have one advice that is not written here. Any database that only grows will sometimes crash no matter what will be the new generation disks or so, which means we need to have not only the capability to add, but also, and to do it, to delete. Between you and me, I think this was a big paradigm in artificial intelligence, why it did not come to a much more value and place in the world, is because it was written as if knowledge is only added and knowledge is never deleted. We will need to think about it, even within the TOC circle, not only to add knowledge, also to know when to delete a certain knowledge. And okay. Here, the main points, I think I put here my main points for lesson learned. A very good summary of the story, but really summary. The definition of the gap is very important because this was the focus of the whole logic. A summary of the operational facts that have caused the gap. Forget all the hypotheses that were invalidated. They can be ruled out. Leave what happened. And then a short summary of the logical tree to show me how the flawed paradigm caused the operational cause. I need the verbalization of the new paradigm and then the summary of the future reality tree. Well, I believe trees can be eventually, once you create a tree and it is a good tree, eventually you can come with a summary tree. The summary tree might have very long arrows, might have not include all the sufficiency cases, but let us say, if I say the vast majority of people who will look at it will see the logic through the long arrows because they are in this environment and they are used to it, and the sufficiencies that you have put, they take it as if it is oxygen. I don't need to see it in the summary. Okay, summary as a delivery. Okay. Fellows, just briefly now, the process. In order to put it, we need an organizational process to identify surprises and make a decision when to invest the energy and the efforts of a team to make a good inquiry, to make the lesson. Once the team is gathered, the very first task is to verbalize the gap between expectations and outcome. Let me repeat again my experience. It took a lot of time to verbalize the gap. Once the gap was fully agreed by all the team, all the rest was warp speed. Okay, was very fast. But getting the focus had a huge meaning. Then, of course, we have the gap. We need to identify the flawed paradigm. Remember, it goes through identification of the operational cause, and then what is the flawed paradigm in us that makes this operational cause possible. Then we certainly need to update the flawed paradigm. Then we need to predict the future ramification, all possible outcomes, looking for the negative branches. Because it's so easy to come, okay, there is update, let us change this. Just a minute. There could be some negatives here. You see, if I'm adding a technological, a business project manager, there is manpower involved here. I don't know if we have, I mean, this is something that needs to get an answer. Then develop all the new procedures that stem from the updated paradigm. Fellow, here could be that we will need another team or teams, because this is tedious but necessary. I need to create new procedures, okay? Sometimes it could be that we need to change some of our books about how to do things. Okay, if this is a need, put the time onto it. It's probably very important. And then to write out a document to state how the new understanding is based on the specific event. Try to people to understand all of this. Now I have a very short summary of the, let us say, main ideas, maybe less than insights each, but they are ideas. First of all, mistake are opportunities for update our paradigms. Surprise is a signal. The focus of learning is a gap between expectations and outcomes. A team of people with a lot of intuition and also outsiders is the recommended vehicle to carry the learning. Okay? Fellows, sometimes you can do things by yourself. Sometimes two people can do. I still think this is a more robust kind of a way to tackle this kind of learning, to identify a flawed paradigm and look for all its ramifications of the change. Search for information should be based on hypotheses and the need to validate or invalidate them. Don't rush to collect facts. Collect facts that have a meaning for a very specific hypothesis that have been raised. By the way, it could be that when you look for some new hypothesis will come up. Okay. Operational cause, meaning the facts, is not the end of the analysis. We need to keep it very well in our mind. The end of the analysis, at least the identification analysis, is a flawed paradigm. So identify the mission for the first part of the learning, and then comes the second part, which means reverbalization, reverbalize the paradigm, generate the updated paradigm as much as possible, because in quite a lot of cases it could encompass quite a lot, and then we really prevent quite a lot of surprises in the future. Just to change the policies and procedures is not enough to institute the learning. You need the basic logic to find the right tool to deliver the logic why we are doing things the way we do. First, generally speaking, this is it. This is kind of description, what I was in the past and what I like to do in the future. I always ask myself, okay, what I would like to do when I really grown up. And so I put myself some notes that I'm very serious about. So we still have 5 minutes here. what kind of questions you like already to ask, attack, challenge me. Please remember, I like this to be considered to be a TOC application. Could be with changes that you might be instrumental in pushing me to do this. But this is my own objective at the moment. Any questions, challenges? Yes, Justin, just a minute.
You said that the first step is to capture the surprise. Are there any hints of building a robust feedback system that will give you quickly enough those signals?
Yes, but they will not cover everything. Part of the thing, and I think Ellen Barnard did some job there, is about, let us say, when we plan, we state some kind of hopes. And we need to check, sometimes on the way, sometimes when already reached, whether there is a gap between the expectation and the outcomes. You are touching a point that I did not make here, but in the paper that I wrote, is really noted, that I do believe that management in general should record their expectations from any move that they do. Because later, after 1 year, the easiest thing is to change the expectation. I mean, we never expected that. And this is bad because you ran out of facing reality and facing that maybe you are caught in a flawed paradigm. Problem is, it does not encompass everything. There are, let's call it, real surprises that you never thought that something like this would happen. And then what? And you don't have the expectation, but you can imagine. In one sort of, my story sort of, was something like this, that suppose you are the CEO of a company, and your most trusted VP put you a letter of resignation. One day you never thought that this could happen. You never saw the signals, but he said, okay, I found a better job. I'm going to be the CEO of somewhere else. And you ask myself, what happened to me? Now, this you cannot record. You can record what are formal moves with a hope. And then my advice is, record it. I know it exposes yourself, but the value is huge. And to me, if I put very clearly my expectation, on one hand, I'm exposing myself. On the other hand, well, let us say, I show a very high confidence. I radiate confidence if I'm able to do so. And this also sometimes is extremely beneficial, right? You can write the cloud, okay. Thank you for this question. Anybody else?
When you're checking for hypothesis, why you just don't...
Can you repeat the question now?
Sorry. When you're checking for a hypothesis, why you don't use something like a past reality tree and work yourself downwards from the already known undesirable effects?
Actually, I'm using it, but first of all, look, what you have is one UDI, which is a gap. This is where you start. What is the next step? Fellow, what is the next step in a normal CRT when you have an UDI? You ask yourself, what could cause it? Now, because it is in the past, this was caused, period. Okay? Now, let us give me more than one hypothesis. And here I'm pushing you. Because you will give me a full past tree. Don't know if it did happen or not. But then he will come with another possibility. Could be that there's something totally different. As you have seen, there are the categories which already says, first of all, ask yourself whether the expectations were realistic. Then ask yourself if they are realistic, or it could have been done, what happened in the execution. So already you are a little bit. So I think I need to squeeze a hypothesis from people. Christoph Lambert has at least bring me to my knowledge that somebody has, as a part, offered it as a scientific method. Not to come up with one hypothesis and then try to check it, but in the very start to come with many more than one and then check it. This is actually what I'm trying to do here.
Very good. Thank you, Eli.